Hi, it's Sandra Alexander. I'm a speech therapist, mother of a child with autism, and here with another great Myhana little webinar. This is stimulus prompt fading. So we're going to learn about how this works. So before this, we did briefly talk about stimulus prompts. So stimulus prompts are cues that for a learner, when you give the discrete stimulus or instruction for a particular task or behavior to be more salient or obvious that you want the child to do. So we'll focus on prompt fading now. And stimulus prompt fading is very important, and we'll talk about how we do it. But the reason it's important, and I'm going to back up so I don't forget, the reason that it's important is that you want your child to be independent and not dependent on having to be told all the time or shown all the time on prompts. So you need to plan how you're going to fade your prompts. You don't want to be doing it haphazardly. It might not work well. So you need to be strategic. You want to make sure that you're mindful of this and that all the staff that work with the kids, your kids in school, are mindful of this. So everybody's trying to do the same thing in the same way. So when you go into an IEP meeting, you can ask about this. Or if you go to do an observation, you should be looking for this kind of thing as well, because you're trying to get your child to be independent. So the types of prompt fading techniques include gestural prompts, positional prompts, redundancy cues, and stimulus prompt fading, or shaping, excuse me. So stimulus prompts, gestural prompts, gestures like pointing, glancing or glaring in a direction, nodding toward a stimulus or location. So here's some examples of stimulus prompts for positional cues. So A, let's say, is your target, and here's the child, and here's A. So initially, you want them to pick A, and it's right in front of them. And then you can move, you're fading it, and you're putting it just a little in front of them, and then you line it all up. Now, a stimulus redundancy cue, for example, you have the color of a target word on a card matching the printed word. It increases the likelihood of the child choosing the card, but you may want to fade off the redundancy of that. For example, the word sun might be printed in black. And so they recognize the word instead of only just the color. Okay? Or it could be the largest card in an array of a target. Stimulus prompts, visual and textual prompts, sentence strips or listing of steps or checklists. So display printed word, phrase, photograph, or a picture icon that indicates the correct response. Listing the steps and what to do, for example, to get dressed, or what it is they need to do to complete a task. So at first, for example, you could list an entire sentence of the task to be performed and eventually maybe just get to a key word. You may also want to fade checklists by combining steps and then eventually letting go of the list entirely. Fading prompts should be based on the learner's performance. The prompts that are intended to be faded, not there for the rest of their life in most cases. And they should be faded from the most intrusive, like hand over hand or pointing, to least intrusive, and to try to do it quickly. Please remember, prompts are supplemental stimuli. They're not supposed to be there forever. You're not teaching pointing or teaching them to recognize you pointing to the thing. You want them to do it. You fade from, like I said before, most intrusive to least intrusive, and aim to fade prompts quickly to reduce a child being prompt dependent. They can only do it if you prompt them to. But if that's not working, try to be comfortable returning to a previous prompt as needed, so that if the child's making a lot of errors, back down and help them learn the steps. So ways to prevent prompt dependency include avoid vocal prompts, minimize fully prompted trials or trails of behavioral consequences, and prompt from behind. So remember that prompt dependency means the child does it only when you cue them to do it. So to teach independent, we want to get rid of that. So there are times that there may be structures that we put in place that'll be there for a while, okay? And they may be there for a long time, They serve as a reminder of what to do, but for the most part, we want to try to minimize these to get more independence. So to prevent prompt dependency, avoid reliance on your vocal prompts. And they are the most difficult to fade out because you're also used to saying them yourself. But there may be times you have to give vocal instruction, but providing the learner with instructions for each step may not always, it's not going to be good once they can do it. So you can maybe help them start and see how they do, and don't prompt all the time with your voice. Use the stimulus fading strategy like we already discussed. You might want to limit the exposure to fully prompted trials and fade the prompts as soon as possible. If the learner thinks you're going to help all the time, why would they put forth the effort? If they think, you're going to do it, why bother? Use a prompt from behind whenever possible. You can be behind the child, for example. Other considerations: ensure that the curriculum that the teacher is using is hierarchical and developed, and that prerequisite skills are in place. So the child should be able to point before you're asking them to point to something. They have to be able to physically point. If they have an OT issue, you've got to work on that before you do the pointing. And that's with other behaviors as well. Make sure if you're teaching how to brush teeth, the child needs to be able to physically hold a toothbrush or open their mouth. You get the picture. And you may have to teach each of these in isolation first. Use the most effective yet least intrusive prompts. Less intrusive prompts are easier to fade because the learners more closely approximately what would happen independently in the environment. And that helps already more with built-in generalization. And then also, of course, gets you closer to independence faster. And like I said, we've gone over make sure your curriculum is appropriate and use the most effective, least intrusive prompt. Once again, I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm Sandra Alexander. I'm a speech therapist. Take time to digest everything. And if you need prompts, view it again. It won't hurt you. And thank you for watching. Have a great day.